A very good evening to all of our viewers and participants. I, Arya Mirokhe, Social Activity Coordinator at Social Welfare and Development, welcome you all to the concluding webinar of our campaign Rejuvenating Rashtra. Rejuvenating Rashtra is a step taken by VIT Social where we discuss about the most affected sectors which will help rejuvenate our Rashtra towards a brighter tomorrow. It is important to take care of our increasingly volatile planet, but more importantly, it is to take care of the people who live in it. The topic of today's webinar, women empowerment, is the most emerging topic that needs to be discussed. Where gender inequality exists, it is generally women who are excluded or discriminated. Therefore, a critical aspect of promoting gender equality is the empowerment of women. And to deliberate this topic, we have a very special person with us today. I take this privilege to welcome our chief guest, Ms. Nomito Kamdar ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Nomito Kamdar ma'am is a brave person who not only works for women empowerment as a main cause, but also strive towards bringing a change in attributes of people towards the same. Ms. Nomito runs the Wilderness School, a non-profit organization promoting outdoor learning, environmental conservation, and social development for over 2.5 decades. She has been so wonderful in our work that she has received the Nari Shakti Puraskar by the President of India, Mr. Ramnath Kovind, in the year 2019. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And with your permission, shall we begin today's webinar?
We should.
Yes. So, ma'am, you have been working in this field, and as we know that you are the founder of the Adventure, a wilderness school, can you please tell us something about the NGO? What objectives do you look to pursue through this organization?
Okay. We are the Adventurers, a wilderness school, and we started this organization almost 40 years ago. And I have been actively participating in the organization's activities for the past 35 years. That makes me sound old, right? But we have been, we started with going out to the Western Ghats to understand the Western Ghats and be a part of it just for the thrill of. Then we realized that the thrill of going outdoors is just not enough, and then there has to be learning. So, education through adventure or experiential learning became a very important goal of the organization. So, starting from little children, where we do nature induction programs, we show them, the hills, the valleys, and the river, because otherwise they will have no way of knowing what is the river, what is a lake, what is a pond, what is a sea. The different what you call the sources of water, or the different geographical aspects of which are around us. So starting from that to leadership camps, rock climbing camps. For women, we took them out. Uh, we took people out from the corporate sectors. We did corporate outbound training programs. So over the past 35 years, we have developed a wonderful curriculum for various cross sections of people, so that they can gain from these experiences and they become stronger human beings. So the medium of the activity, if we talk about conservation, if we say conservation, and if we are talking about conservation and people have never been to the forest, then they'll never understand conservation. So to give them a thrill, or a reason to come into the wilderness would be the thrill of the adventure activities. It could be swimming, coracling, camping, trekking, rock climbing, whatever it is. And once they come and participate in that, and then we tell them that, we have to conserve this, then it makes sense. Otherwise, it makes no sense to them. So that's what we are doing. If I was in my center, I would have shown you. Our center is in the banks of the Linganmakki Reservoir, where 350 square kilometers of water and the hills on one side, the Western Ghats, and in between is my home. That is where I live. So that's the background. 5 years of experience can't be said in 30 lines even. So that's it.
Yes, ma'am. You have done a very exceptional job and a big applause to you. Your
And
idea of outdoor learning is very great. So, ma'am, I was researching about your work and I came across the Ashoka Fellowship. Can you
Mhm.
tell us something more about that?
Okay, Ashoka is a very, very interesting organization, and I had the opportunity to work with the organization for 6 years. And as a part of the organization, the first person, we talk about social entrepreneurship and the person who is making social change. And the first person I met in my journey in Ashoka was Kishore Rite, who's Shrishti's dad. Okay. And we went to Mailguard. I remember my 1 year old son was on my lap, and we went into the Mailguard forest, and we learned a lot about his work and his dreams and his aspirations. So there are many people like Kishorite who talked about tiger conservation at that point, and tiger conservation was only the top of the tip of the iceberg. And when you talk about tiger conservation, you talk about everything that comes in the pyramid. So it was interesting understanding his work. So Ashoka Fellowship or the Social Entrepreneurship Program is about various different people, who are doing amazing work. And I had the opportunity to meet a lot of interesting people. I'll just give you a few examples so you'll understand. MG Papama, she's a Dalit woman who has been able to uh, collect lakhs of people for the for small savings, very small savings. And for a Dalit woman to be able to do that and organize people was a story that was amazing. Starting in Karnataka, the program reached all over India. So social entrepreneurs are people who make social change at a national level, and many of them, for example, Pratham is an organization that is working towards primary education. So there are many, Satpuda Foundation, The Adventurers, Goonj is an organization that is working towards making clothing available to all cross sections of people. So what is exciting is these really exciting people, and they have these really exciting ideas, which they're making to happen in a reality, and to be a small part of their work was very, very satisfying. So that's where Ashoka came in my journey, in my life's journey.
Yes, ma'am. It was very great to hear about your journey that is starting from Karnataka to all over India. It would be an inspiration to all the social entrepreneurs. Also, ma'am, if we see the current situation, women empowerment is the most crucial subject. So, are there any specific practices or exercises to help women become more empowered?
Anything that we do here, anything that we do, or any effort towards women empowerment is really worth it. Okay. It's really important and it's very important to happen. And everybody has their own different way of doing it. I can only share with you what I do to make sure that women empowerment happens. I believe women empowerment is about realizing a woman's own strength within herself. Okay. And so, what I do to make sure these happen, maybe in the programs and stuff like that, a lot of our work we do only with women. They could be middle-aged women, they could be teenage girls. So, with a very specific purpose, they could be urban women and they could be rural women too. So, once they come on our program, we facilitate very different kind of learning. So, for example, they are learning how to paddle a coracle, which is a round boat and which is a little hard to make sure that it goes in the right direction. But once you get it, it can take you across the world, I mean, wherever there's water. So or they might be camping in the wilderness, they may be making a campfire, they can be doing all these kinds of things which are probably for the very first time. So what happens in these processes is they realize that they have strengths that they had never, they discover their own strengths which they probably didn't know of before. And once they do that, they can take it and apply it into their day-to-day lives, which is very, very fulfilling. I have had some really wonderful examples. For example, there was a woman who came on our program, and then when she, due to certain situations, had to ride a bike, to make sure she goes to the end of the road to make the milk reach there, because she owns a few cows and her husband was not there for a week or so. She decided to ride his bike and go. And once she did that, you know, it changed the parameters of everything. Once she could ride a bike, it means, you know, empowerment. It means that she's able to do so much more. It's telling the world, listen, I can do this. I don't have to depend on you. So when she did that, it's taking the learning to the next level. She said, okay, if I can move around boat in the water, why can't I ride this bike? You know? So she started riding the bike and started reaching where she had to, and she didn't have to stop at all. After that. There are many stories. There are many, many stories.
Yes, ma'am. I truly agree with you, whatever you said about women empowerment. Whenever a woman realizes the potential in her, she can fly away. So, ma'am, moving to the next question. So we know that the government of India has taken various steps for women empowerment, but where is the system lagging, or what are the main problems that need to be solved?
No, no, I lost the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, sure. So, as we know that the government of India has taken various steps for women empowerment, but where is the system lagging, or what are the main problems that need to be solved?
Okay. So my whole take on this is a little different. Okay. It's not about, the government making schemes for us, okay, for women. But what I think is the women themselves have to take charge of their lives, you know, and they have the empowerment comes from within, is what I believe. Once the empowerment comes from within, and they can then take it to wherever, to whichever extent they want to. So it's one thing with the outside world, whether it's the government or it's the society that is offering many things. But if the woman doesn't take it, then what's the point? Right? And when it comes to that, I would say that a woman should grab every opportunity. I'm saying grab, okay? Every opportunity that comes her way to ensure that she reaches and she gets what she wants. Otherwise, anything that is offered, if it doesn't reach her, if she doesn't reach out to it and take it, then what's the point? So I think the starting point is the woman herself.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree with you that empowerment comes from within. Also, I had a question that in rural or in slum areas, every family expects a boy baby over a girl. So, have you organized any camps to change their motives or thinking process?
I think that is a story of the past. I think now everybody is looking forward to beautiful girls like you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story. I have a son, okay, who's about 20 years old. And the day he was born, and the doctor brought him out, and my mother in law knew it was a boy, her face actually fell, you know, because she wanted a girl. Okay. So that is where we are right now. A lot of people want girls more than boys because girls are doing this as well, right? So, but having said that, the one thing that I have been able to do through my programs is help people understand that women can do exactly anything that men can. Just yesterday, I had a very interesting couple who came to my center, and once they come to the center, we take them for a boat ride. So the man asked me, "Who is the driver?" I said, "I'm the driver." Okay. He said, "Oh, I look at the driver and decide whether I get into the boat." I said, "You're lost. Okay. You don't want to come, don't come. But I'm the one who's taking everybody in the boat. If you want to come, you should. And if you don't want to come, it's your call. I have nothing to say." And I also told him, even women are flying planes today. There are pilots. But also, there are rural women who are climbing the electric poles. I don't know in Maharashtra, but in Karnataka, there is a line woman, electrical line woman, which was completely considered a man's job. So, in a situation like that, where women, even there are opportunities for women to do anything, I think that is changing. You know that I want a boy, and now we are seeing, okay, there's a very interesting part of our program too. Like I said, we started almost 40 years ago. But today in our program, we have at least 65% participation of women. So women come on our programs, feel psychologically, emotionally, and physically safe to participate. So they participate in our adventure programs, and then their children, their boys come and participate in the program. So what we have is, I think, what we need to create is an emotionally safe area for women to come in, for girls to be born, and to girls to do what they want. And I think that will change. The boy carrying on the name and the heritage of the family, I think, is slowly dying down. I don't believe in that anymore. I'm a daughter of parents who have four daughters, and we have no boys in our house, and we feel completely safe, and we have never felt unwanted, or never felt that, that I wish we had a son. I've never heard that from my parents. I never knew of that. So I think that will change, and that should change.
Yes, ma'am. It was very great to hear that women can take any profession and can be successful in it. Also, we see that nowadays there are two separate terms which are widely used: women empowerment and feminism. What is your perspective about these two terms?
Okay, let me share what I think. Okay, and this might be my own personal perspective. It may not be completely, I don't know if everybody agrees with it. Feminism is advocacy of women's rights in the gender equality situation. You know, so they are thinking of, equal right. I mean, woman empowerment is. Did we lose each other? Still there?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, I think I'm still there. Yeah, are we still there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am was, yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So, what I was saying is, woman empowerment is from within, inside, right? So, I think that women have to find the strength within themselves and take that forward, and that would be termed as women empowerment. And what we need for women empowerment is more a conducive atmosphere. If people are supporting each other, then the women can succeed in what they are doing. But a feminism thing is a more political thing. It's a big stand. Make sure that women are not discriminated against and stuff like that. So this is my perspective of these two things.
Yes, ma'am. Also, we see that men play an integral role in the part of women empowerment. What are your insights on that?
If there were no men, women didn't need empowerment. Yeah. So we would be more than equal, right?
Yeah.
So we, I don't think we should pitch ourselves against uh, men versus women. Let's look at a situation where there are lots of girls. I think you're all studying in engineering college, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
and how your parents think of you, or how they what is their perspective about you. They want you to achieve so many things. What was considered a completely male dominated thing, engineers were men. Today it's not anymore. Today women are also engineers, men are one men are one thing. Uh, but I was so what I was trying to say is, men's role is, I think, a very supportive role, in that sense, or even if it was non-interfering, it's enough. If
Ma'am,
they don't
sorry to
interfere,
interrupt, but can you please hold your camera to your eye level?
okay, is that better? Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
better?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why, I think that's what men's role. Either they support or they do not interfere. If they do that much, then women empowerment will happen from within.
Yes, I'm totally agreed with you. Ma'am, also you said that you have many stories related to women empowerment. We would love to know more about it. Can you please tell us one more story about it?
Okay, let me share one very, very interesting story of a tribal woman. Okay. In Karnataka, there are Siddhis. Siddhis are women, are a tribe from the African origin. Okay. They came into Karnataka when the Portuguese came to Goa, and they brought the uh, African origin people for their, as their slaves, literally. So those people have settled in Karnataka in different parts of Karnataka, and they are called the Siddhis. And there is a Siddhi woman called Lakshmi Siddhi, who's a very dear friend of mine. And she came on my camp and she participated in the program. And when she was paddling, and she was able to show the see, there's another challenge when it comes to women. There's a class divide, right? There's a caste divide: upper class women, lower class women. So the cities are considered lower class women, and there are, upper class women there. But when they are in our camp, they all do everything, and they're able to. The cities were able to show the upper class women, what their strengths were, because to live in a forest, the cities were more capable of than the upper class women, because obviously the upper class women are very protected, right? So anyway, when she was here, she learned how to paddle, and she cried when she could not paddle. She learned to do these new things, and then the story closed there, and she went back and she's tried to apply it into her day-to-day life and stuff like that. Then she went to the Jagannath Puri temple. When she went to the Jagannath Puri temple, the security people stopped her there, and they said, "Listen, you can't go into the temple because only Hindus can go into the temple." She said, "I'm Indian, I'm Hindu, and I want to go into the temple." And they said, "No, just because you wear a sari, you're an African woman." Because they have African features, curly hair, dark face, and stuff like that. So, like, just because you wear a sari, don't think that you can fool us. And they actually roughed her up. The woman was so empowered. She just called the DC. Yeah, she called the DC, the local DC, and said, "These people are roughing me up, and I have an Aadhaar card to show you I'm Indian and I'm a Hindu, and they should let me into the temple." So I was really, really impressed with the way she took it forward. Because what started as a small seed of learning and hope went on to become, even a big thing, to be able to impact the lives of so many other people. So that is how it works out. So there are many, many stories like that. There was another woman, Renuka, and she was in a hurry to go back. She was also a Siddhi woman, and she wanted to go back. And when she wanted to go back, she was getting very nervous because her husband had told her, "If you don't come back by 4 o'clock, don't even come home." So when she went home, it was very, very interesting what she did. So we were all very worried for her. So we asked her, "Renuka, what did you do? Renuka, what did you do?" She said, "Hey, don't worry, I'll handle this. Yeah." So this is the wonderfulness about women. So she said, "I went home, okay, and this man was really getting ready to rough me up, actually to beat her up. So she took a glass of water and she said, 'There's poison in it, okay, and I'm going to drink it if you touch me.'" Okay. So the guy got scared and he said, "Okay, leave her alone. And she's saying, "After that, he didn't come after me." So there are ways people deal with this. They find out their own ways. So there's another story of a woman, an upper class woman who had never stepped out of her house. And just like all of you, her daughter got really good marks. Okay. And she was almost, she wanted to do engineering. Now, the family from which this woman was, they did not want that girl to do engineering because they said, "What is the point? Yeah, we are anyway going to get her married." But this woman knew that her daughter wanted to do engineering. So what she did was, okay, she said, "Okay, I'm going to take this up." Okay. She said, "For the first time in my life, after I came to Honnemadu, which is where our center is, I decided to go and take things on my own. I went to the different colleges. I took the different application forms. I made sure that I get whatever I need. I make sure I collect all the papers, and her daughter is now in final year engineering." So, there are so many, and the men didn't support her at all, but that didn't bother her. She said, "Okay, I don't care. If you don't come, this is what I'm going to do for my daughter." And she went ahead and did it. So these are, the stories of empowerment of women who come, and learn from our programs and move on.
Yes, ma'am. It was very great to hear that how your learnings has persuaded women to stand up on their own and succeed. Also, I wanted to talk about the a phrase that we have all heard, "Beti Padhao" or "Beti Bachao." So, how to emphasize this topic in today's era and implement it?
ऐसे बेटी बढ़ाओ पढ़ाओ दुनिया बचाओ. Okay, this is what I'm saying. As we all know, there's this story that God could not be in every place, so He made woman there, right, in every home. So there's women in every home. If the woman is educated, I'm saying educated in inverted comma, because education doesn't mean only going to school. Education means doing a lot of things. So if the woman is educated, then what happens is the whole approach of the family changes. I see let's look at the example of Indira Gandhi. Okay, this is not party politics, but she was a woman prime minister of our country. She led our country. Okay, and if we look back and see what made it possible for her to lead our country, would be that possibly that she had the exposure. She had the right exposure with her father, and so she was for her. It was a very easy thing to become the prime minister. If you look at our, even if you look at a very small home, if you look at the kitchen, it's managed by the mother. They are leaders, right? And they do this fantastic job of managing the kitchen, making sure who gets coffee with what level of sugar and who gets tea with or without sugar or whatever else, right? So there's so much happening. So is that not leadership? Is that not education? Is that not being able to take? Is that not managerial skills? Is that you don't need an MBA for that, right? We take it for granted that our mother takes care of her so well, and we need so much more. But yeah, so and if that woman had a little extra, if she had that little extra education. See, I think today's in parlance, when we are talking about education, we are talking about economic independence also. But economic independence need not come only through formal literal education. It can come through other means too. And once that happens also, then I think they're set. I always tell young people that they should be able to stand on their own feet, you know, whether they choose to get married or not, or even if in their marriage, so that if it is necessary, then they can stand on their own two little feet. Whatever happens, we don't know what are the things that can happen. So, but at least we have the self confidence. Women will have the self confidence of living through that. So I think we have to awaken that self confidence, and that self confidence can happen with Beti Padhao, you know, and make sure that we have the right facilities. When we talk about schools, the rural schools sometimes don't have washrooms for children. It's very sad. Yesterday I was just sitting in a small restaurant and I saw seven women, uh, and I was just smiling and I was so happy for them. I think they had come for some meeting or something to the town. Talguppa is the town where we are, and they were sitting at a table and having a meal. I'm sure the food they cooked at home would be much better than the food that they were eating there. But just the fact that they were sitting there and eating together was making me happy and saying, okay, rural women, rural tribal women are coming out. So that was great. So that's the thing. Exposure is also education. I think women should have exposure. And once they have exposure, whether they're children or adults, once they have exposure, then there's no stopping them.
Yes, ma'am. As you said, that exposure can lead to women in conquering the world. I truly agree with you, ma'am. Also, we have got received a question from the audience. Uh, Ma'am, do you think equal representation of women in governance according to sex ratio improves social and economic status of women?
Equality need not be in numbers, is what I believe. Equality can be in the voice. Equality can be in the impact. Okay, how we impact the rest of the society is as important as the numbers. And for that, I think, in a sense, for a few years, we might have to give women an opportunity to be wherever they are. There's a certain reservation, whether it's seats and stuff like that. where or in the government quota and things like that. But I think that should slowly go, and women should fight on their own might. So they will be able to then have an equal. The representation need not necessarily be in numbers, but can be in impact. So when women think, they should not be thinking only of women, they should be thinking of society as a whole. We can't think of a society without men, right? Men and women are two sides of the same coin, and I think they are very important. Each have their own roles. I mean, each are capable of doing many things that the other is not. For example, we are capable of having children and they are not, and that is as important. And I still think that uh, we should not be competing, we should be cooperating.
Yes, ma'am, that is a very great line said by you, and I totally agree with you. Your doings for the betterment of society is truly admirable, ma'am. What persuades you to work hard every day?
uh, if you look at it as work, it's very hard work, because once a group comes in, I live, I forget my family, I eat, sleep. Even my parents know. I have very old octogenarian parents, 80 plus, both of them. They know that once a group comes in, I will not be calling them. So I live with the group. If you consider it work, it's hard, but I don't consider it work. I consider it life. I get to meet really wonderful people. I get to hear really wonderful stories. I get to understand the different perspectives of life, different ways of living. And so that keeps me enthused, and that keeps me charged, and that keeps me wanting to do this regularly. So it's not considered work for me. I don't consider I consider it my life, my being, my calling, whatever you call it.
Yes, ma'am. So, as we heard about the work, your work, I'm sure that many people would be inspired by you. Also, I wanted to ask, what are your agenda for future? Like, are you planning to extend what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. We are on the last leg. I'm old enough to be your mom, or maybe slightly older than that even. I think your mom will be younger than me. So I'm in the last leg. In the last leg, we need to do a lot of things. Our latest plan is to build an outdoor university, a university based on outdoor learning, where people will come and learn a lot of things and then want to go back and take it along with them. Uh, so we have various different courses that are planned. For example, in an experiential learning program, if somebody comes and participates in a program and then starts writing papers, then we will have so many interesting learning. I'm from a very rural area, deep in the forest, right? And there is so much learning that is available from the senior citizens, from the people who might be our grandfather's level. And if we don't learn it now, we will lose it, right? It could be medicinal plants, it could be way of life, it could be when to sow a seed, to make sure that it will become a fruitful tree. It could be the when is it going to rain, whether the rain's over. All these things are really, really amazing. These are traditional knowledge that people from the villages have. And if we don't record them, we are losing out on a whole treasure trove of information and learning. So, based on that, we want to create a university, and we call it a university without walls. So there may not be infrastructure in our university, but the learning is everywhere. And if people pick it up and get credits for that, we are trying to build a credit system. And if people start credit, then we'll become as famous as your VIT.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree with you that learning doesn't require a wall or infrastructure. It begins with the idea. So, ma'am, we'll talk about the Nari Shakti Puraskar that you received. How does it felt when you got nominated for the Nari Shakti Puraskar? How was the atmosphere there when you were receiving the award from the president?
First of all, let me share a small prelude to that whole thing. First, there was a call, and this woman said, "Hello, I'm calling from the Women and Child Welfare Department in New Delhi. You have been selected, you have been nominated," she said. you've been nominated for the Nari Shakti. I said, don't joke, yeah, and hung up. Okay. Then she said, because I had not applied for it. Then she called back again and she said, hello, excuse me, but you have been nominated for this award and I'm serious about this and this is not a joke. So I said, okay, great. So she said, aren't you excited? I said, why will I be excited if I'm nominated, right? Then she said, no, you've been selected. I said, then you use the right word, no? And by then I was a little irritated. And then when she said, you've been selected, for 1 minute I was stunned, I was listening. I was shocked. How did this happen? And stuff like that. But when actually I got the opportunity to go to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, it was a very overwhelming moment, I should share, because for people who are working deep in the forest, we have no way of reaching publicity to anybody, so nobody knows about our work. In fact, many people come into our center and say, it is a hidden corner, why are you not sharing with people? But then we are like, okay, that's fine, but as long as people are finding us, the right people are finding us, then that's great. So for people who are working deep in the forest to be recognized and the name of the organization being mentioned in the highest office of the country, it was one moment very, very overwhelming, I think. It till I reached there and till it happened, wrongte khade ho jate hai, say, no, you have that hair raising feeling. So I had that hair raising feeling, and met some really, really amazing women. I met one amazing woman, Dalia Contractor. She's an environmental architect. She's 90 years old. And she was like, I'm 90 years old and there's so much I have to do to make the world right before I die. So I was like, wow, so much to learn from so many interesting people. So that was the best part, I think, about the award. There was Devaki Amma. Devaki Amma is an interesting story because Devaki Amma is almost about 87, 88 years old. And by the time she reached Rashtrapati Bhavan to receive the award, she went to the washroom and fainted.
Hello, ma'am.
Was there with her.
Sorry, ma'am, but we didn't get to hear you because of some network issues. Can you please repeat?
Yeah, yeah. So Devaki Amma is a Keralite woman who has planted a forest. Her husband brought her saplings every day, and she planted these saplings and she has made a forest. So it's a private forest that she has. So she was one of the awardees. And by the time she reached Rashtrapati Bhavan, after the day-long thing, she fainted. Okay. And we were feeling very bad for her because for them it's a lifetime award, right? When they're 87. When we are in our 50s, for us it's like midlife sort of milestone. We can still do so much more. But when Devaki Amma was there, uh, and then when her name was called out, she didn't come to receive the award. So our heart was going out for her. It's like she came till here and she didn't receive the award. But our president, sir, he broke protocol and he reached Devaki Amma where she was because she was being taken care by the doctors and stuff like that. And he gave her the award there. And so I was so impressed with the president of India. So I said salam because he made that effort to go and reach there and then make sure she has the exact same picture like we have of her receiving the award from the president. So that was another very, very interesting story that happened there. So
Yes, ma'am. It was very, very great to hear about your experience while receiving the award, and you have done a very commendable job. Also, I wanted to tell you that we are receiving many questions from the audience. I guess people are really enjoying and want to know more.
yeah,
So,
tell me, I can answer. Yeah.
yes, ma'am. So, if we see the current situation, that is COVID-19, we are confined to one place. Also, we see that there are various families where women are not treated properly. There is still domestic violence in families. So, how can we change this? What, as a child and a family member, can stop this?
See, I think that is the biggest situation that we are facing right now is that because a lot of men are confined to their homes, and so there have been a lot of victims of domestic violence, as you said, and that is heartbreaking actually. Um, we will have to use the Renuka method, to get back to our men and say, listen, keep off us, otherwise you will have to face the consequences and stuff like that. So, in a sense, we will have to very strongly, take charge of our own situation and say, get out of my life, don't touch me, or, uh, do that in the right manner or whatever else. So I think that is one very important thing the COVID situation has brought about as a lot of as you call domestic violence, and if we take charge of the situation, then, and I think the other thing that we should do is support each other as neighbors. If something's happening, unke ghar mein ho raha hai, it does not concern me, will not work. Domestic violence is domestic violence. We'll have to point out and we'll have to support each other and make sure that it doesn't continue. And of course, there are many happy families also. Not every situation is negative. So let's get the positivity from the happy families, and let's make sure that we remove the negativity from the negative families. So this is what
Yes,
I.
ma'am. Indeed, we should support each other. Not only women supporting women, but as a person, we should support each other. Also, I wanted to ask that, ma'am, how did you manage such huge facilities and expenses for your work?
We are an entrepreneurship model. Okay, we have not taken funds from anybody. One of the reasons why we have not taken funds from anybody is once we take funds, then they dictate how we run our center, and we are not willing to do that. So, in our entrepreneurship model, people pay us, okay, and they participate in our programs, which is not much, which is very affordable. Even the middle class people can afford, and we cross subsidize it for people who may not be able to afford it. For example, we may have children from economically backward sections participating. We do a life skills training program for children from the group homes. Group homes means juvenile homes. They might have done some, uh, I wouldn't like to say the word, but crime. So they are in this juvenile home because you can't put them into jail. So they are in the juvenile homes and they come on our program. And every time they come, I'm on when I finish the program, I learn so much from them because it's not them, it's us. We have made the mistake and that's why they're ended up doing what they're doing. And every time I tell them, "Sir, I'm strong, I have run this program before and I'm not going to break down." But every time they come and go, I am crying on the shore. So these children are people who may not be able to afford anything, but our corporate programs will cross subsidize and reach uh, these programs to the economically backward sections of our society. But I think one thing that we are very clear about is we have simplified, we have demystified adventure. When I started doing adventure was for young studs. You have to have crampons and boots and goggles and God knows what. He said, no, just bring what you have. Bring your lunchbox, bring a bag, bring your school shoes. And so we have made it possible. So we have reduced the needs of people. So there would be young kids who would go home and tell their parents, ma'am has said we have to bring Puma shoes. I said, bring your dad. I would say, no Puma shoes, nothing. You don't need anything. Just bring your everyday shoes and we'll go for the trek. So we have made it affordable and reachable to all cross sections. And as an organization, we're also very conscious about that. we don't we don't increase our needs so that we need so much money. What we do is we try and simplify everything and make it possible for us to work on a shoestring budget. As young people, you might know, when you have less, you're more creative. When you have more, you tend to depend on facilities, right? So we are trying to be creative all the time. We believe small is beautiful. So we try to keep our organization small and make it reachable to all cross sections of people. And we don't make, uh, you know, we don't, we don't glamorize things. So even if you come to our center, we have two simple rules. We have simplicity and safety. We make sure that simplicity is very simple. We camp on tents, we sleep on the floor, we make a campfire, and we make sure that we leave everything the way it was. We follow what we call minimum impact and zero impact camping. So we don't have to have fancy stuff. People tell us we don't know how to make money, but that's not the point. We will make learning happening. Forget about money. So that's how we live. So resources when we need them will come. Whatever we have to do, it'll happen. But we do very simply. If we simplify life, we can do a lot more.
Yes, ma'am. That is very great to hear that your organization is reaching the people in need, and I really respect that. Also, I wanted to ask a question that how do corporate organizations contribute to economic independence and empowerment of people in developing nation? Empowerment of women in developing nation.
See, there's this whole thing about corporate social responsibility, right? So there's this whole CSR thing where every organization has to put aside certain percentage of their earnings for the corporate social responsibility kind of thing. So the corporates are doing that diligently. Some of them are doing a fantastic job. Some of them are doing it just for the sake of doing it. So when people do it, then we make sure that when it reaches between the urban and the rural, what I think is there has to be a transfer of resources, which is not only funds. It could be learning. It could be I'm from Karnataka, so I'm just saying Bangalore. So why do all the IT industries have to be in Bangalore? Why can't they be in some other places? Why does everything have to be in Nagpur? Why can't it be in Amravati? You know, these are the questions that I have. So that then you generate an income amongst the rural people, and once you generate the income among rural people, what happens is there's an equality rising. Right now, it seems like two different worlds. It seems like we are living here, and the city people are living a different life. But I think that has to, in a way, equalize. And I think slowly we'll get there. So we are on the path. I'm not saying that we are not, but I think the speed has to be increased.
Yes, ma'am. Also, being in a situation we are in, we definitely feel privileged than many other women and girls. So, what do you think that we can do for helping them as college students?
Uh, First of all, go and understand their lifestyle or their living, you know, because I think what we have, I think one big danger of young people meeting people without resources, I would not call them anything else, but their lack of resources in their lives is we don't want to make them like us. We want them to be like them, and maybe we can learn a few things from them also. So I think what we can do is create friendships and bridges. Some of our programs are really interesting where we have economically less privileged children with upper class. I'll share an interesting story again. We had a program that we ran for an upmarket school, which is called Amber Valley Residential School in Chikmagalur, and they came and we had the children from an organization that works with vulnerable children. So they were the vulnerable children together. And I mean, to cut the long story short, we had many stories that happened there in the camp, and we just let them happen without judgment. So we would see that when they were doing campfire activity, all the movie goers were the upper class kids, and all the ticket sellers were the less privileged children, the vulnerable children. We were just watching that, and then we saw that we had some carry mats. Mats are what we put on the floor of the tent to sleep. We saw that all the nice mats were taken off by the upmarket children, and the not so nice mats were left for the less privileged children. And so they came and told us. We said, "Don't worry, we will change that." So we said every tent has to have every kind of child. So you can't have just your friends. You'll have to have a mixed group because we're camping together. And it was interesting because at the end of the camp, when we asked the upmarket kids, they said, "We are not used to these kind of washrooms. We need, more nice washrooms." They were going on and on. And when it came to the vulnerable children, was this girl who said, I want to speak English. And she was speaking in this with this pauses, and she said, I wanted to sleep in Akka tent. She doesn't know English. And then Akka said, no, go away, sleep with your friend. Then she asked a question that brought tears to me and the other organization. Am I not your friend? You know? So when she asked her, am I not your friend? It put the upmarket kids on the defense. They forgot the washroom. They forgot everything. They started saying, oh no, we didn't want to ignore them. We did this, we did that, and all that stuff. They started justifying their act. We haven't done this in a long time. Our friends are important and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to say is but in the end, what happened when we were leaving, the kids, the vulnerable kids had to get into the train, and the upmarket kids had to get into the bus and go. But they were not willing to move because they had built an invisible bond, and that bond was so important. They understood each other. I think understanding each other is very important. So, as young people, if you go out and meet children from rural areas and understand them on the level of friendship, not on the level of I'm trying to do something for you, you know not that I can save you. No, I don't think we can save anybody, and I don't think they can save us. We'll have to share what we have, and share is not in the form of money. Share is also in the form of uh, just being there with them. So that friendship would be important, and that bonding, and I think if that bonding happens, then India will move ahead.
Yes, ma'am. It is very great to know that your learning and your work is actually making a difference between the upper class kids and the lower class kids. Also, ma'am, your work truly justifies the statement there is no limit to what we as a woman can accomplish. What message you want to give to all the women out there?
Not just women, as we talked about this earlier. I see that there are many men and boys also who are listening to me. It's not only about women, it's about a person, is what I think. Let's stop thinking about ourselves as women. Let's start thinking of ourselves as a person, you know. And I think there is some uh, strength and energy in each of us. And I think we have to discover it. We have to make sure it impacts the lives of people around us and in the society, and move on. It could be very different for every different person. And I think that's why we need to find our calling. And so there are people who are engineers who are now doing conservation work. There are people, mostly many my husband is an engineer, Srishti's dad is an engineer. They're all engineers, but now who are doing something totally different, which is not connected to engineering. So I think the calling has to come for each person, and it may be different. And but once the calling reaches and we impact other people, we have to start thinking beyond ourselves, is what I think. So strengthen ourselves to think beyond ourselves. And like you literally said, beyond limits. There is no limit. Sky is the limit.
Yes, ma'am. It is very great to know that it is not only about women but about a person. Ma'am, you are an inspiration to many and you have motivated us all even more to make a difference. It was an immense pleasure talking to the zestful and a powerful personality, Ms. Nomito Kamdar. Thank you for joining and giving us a valuable time, ma'am.